We're still on your birthday.
Okay.
I wanted to ask a question that relates to both this conference and the school in Asheville, the School for Southern Workers. Sort of maybe an obvious question to someone who's not part of that generation, didn't know anything about the subtleties of it, but I keep wondering, because there have been so many accusations about people on the left all being communists, and who sponsors things and who pays for them, and the question of ownership and ties. In other words, to what extent was the school a communist front? The charge that I would expect to be leveled at it. In other words, how did you at the time see that, and what is it in retrospect?
Yeah.
And this Southern Conference as well.
Well, they both could have been or would have been labeled by many people communist. The Southern Conference for Human Welfare
I just want to push this closer to your voice.
Certainly was in the South. Remember, it was held in the Deep South and was unsegregated to this extent. They tried to desegregate it, and the police came in, and Mrs. Roosevelt.
They tried to segregate it.
The police came in to segregate it. And Mrs. Roosevelt, there still was some desegregation, but they had attempted to do it by a formal announcement and have people moving all around, sitting where they wanted to. Mrs. Roosevelt, when they resegregated it, so to speak, with some exceptions that the police chose to ignore, Congressman Patrick sat down on the black side, the people that just ignored certain things. He didn't fool with Bill Mitch, the head of the United Mine Workers. It was like, could occur in a church meeting or anything, They chose to treat him as errors or something. Mrs. Roosevelt, to show her disdain for the whole thing, simply sat in the middle, refused to sit anywhere else except in the middle aisle, and they didn't dare do anything about that. That alone was enough in the eyes of, the whole establishment to do it. But you're speaking more of what, what was there visible, or what was there that
Were the communists putting money into the school, or were they putting
my guess
organizers
is
in?
that the traditions of the Southern School for Workers were YWCA industrial clubs and a women's school for industrial workers, and that gradually that kind of movement was influenced by people on the left who were both communist, socialist, and non-communist people on the left. The fact that the faculty is probably the clearest sign of the move in a somewhat ideological direction. The fact that Leo Huberman never easily marked out as a member, not a member of the Communist Party, never easily marked out as one, but always later the editor of Monthly Review, a very prominent Marxist journal that was never acceptable to the Communist Party, gave you an indication that it was over on the left, you follow me, some of the faculty. Louise McLaren, in her very person and her behavior and her conduct and everything, was always clearly a prim, YWCA person, not only like acting the role, but very unlikely to, form alliances other than at very arm's length, with anybody for anything. But you had to, in the New York scene that she headquartered in for most of the year, with her offices to get ready for these sessions, raise her money. And later when I became, she would use several former students for that purpose to bring them up there. It was clear to me that the New York scene was, a lot of the money was over on left-influenced business and professional people who had simply been, very influenced by it, so that by the Communist Party or by, some of its organizations, so that they were very happy to hear that, whatever was progress was being made in the South, to get a working class get organized and move along. But she had to raise large amounts of money, checks for $100, $500 at these cocktail parties that she would get some wealthy person, and she would let them flow out. You follow me? Some of them might flow out in a very socialist direction. Some might flow out in a more communist direction. Some might flow out in a pure liberal Democratic Party.
So it was at least
The lines
a
got
collection.
sharper after 39. Everything got sharper after that summer of 39. Her troubles in 40, and after that, leading finally to the ending of the school, would it be an indication of how much more difficult it got to be? If you were not an official Seattle school, nobody wanted anything to do with you. Miles Horton had similar problems with Highlander Folk School, even though he clearly never was a communist or a communist sympathizer.
General support for worker organizations wasn't very great
Workers'
after that.
education,
Yeah,
this
workers'
was
education.
almost suspect. The communists want to educate workers to do what? To take over the world. I mean, it was like it wasn't exactly an attractive area, but that's not answering the question of ideology which you're raising. It certainly was a place in which I encountered people on the left, in which I was exposed to left ideas. Not that you hadn't been. That Current Events Club, apparently it had. Maybe Mike Owens, a number of the other people might have been, close to the Communist Party. But the debates would there indicate the different positions. But then I was very close to the Socialist Party. I don't know what, I think I told you that in the part on Dallas. George Edwards, the head of the Socialist Party, was close to my mentor in that period. So that I was much, but I was not ideologically committed to a firm position for the destruction of communist influence like the Unions. There were socialists who were socialists because they were in rebellion against some experience they'd had with communists, you see. I was more attracted to the whole attractiveness of George Edwards and the Socialist Party that I met in Dallas. I found them extremely attractive people, and I think I told you about this earlier. So that, these were experiences that I had. Then the early CIO, you got to remember, in the South was more strikingly under attack constantly, rather than accepted as a coming thing. If you were in the UAW maybe in Detroit, you would have immediately come under socialist influence of Walter Reuther. You would immediately come under this or that influence of the Democratic Party accepting the thing. Here you had the enemy totally surrounding, and it constantly made for a radicalization of some of the left people, you see, to take my own experience. I mean, to be mobbed, to be Ku Kluxed, to be beaten, to, these were experiences.
These are later, you're talking.
Yeah, but they're molding experiences. I mean, you don't stay in love. You don't become like some labor leaders. Well, the more they get a little older and a little more mature, they become conservative. It's very difficult to follow that pattern when that isn't what's happening to you. You're not being accepted because you now bargain a contract, you see. You're faced with a smashing of the union.
This woman who ran the school that raised the money for
Louise
her.
McLaren,
Okay,
yeah.
Louise McLaren. You're saying that she came out of the Y tradition, right?
Yeah, the YWCA.
Now, how would you explain somebody like that? Is it the Depression that did this to her? Or how did
Oh,
she
the
get
Y
into work
had
race?
the Y had industrial girls clubs, and that
was
sounds
a
funny to
natural
you
thing.
as a
Yeah, it
feminist
does.
thing, the very name. But the whole idea was that the Y had been accused of, what is its purpose? Is it to serve upper class people? I mean, it's to serve, So then in Milltown, I remember Roanoke, a very active industrial woman. I can't think of that blonde woman's name. It was the executive secretary of the Y in Roanoke. But she brought her girls every year, several of them, to these things. Several others. Brooks Creedy at Durham. Remember, Durham's a very industrial town. They were guarding over these women's interests in their recreational interests, their social interests,
So it was a logical extension for them to become interested in their
and to be
general
interested
education.
in the trade
yeah.
union movement as one of the devices for improving their conditions. Their
But here
wages.
she was, this sort of prim
She
Y.
was prim in style. The others were more lively and younger, but they all in many ways had a standoffish thing from a politicalization. I don't remember any of them being politicalized, you follow me, to such an extent that they'd resign from the Y and move over to becoming a public communist or public socialist.
If they were more interested in general education,
Yeah,
that was their
right.
purpose.
Yeah, I think, and or of the good of their people, you know. And this was an activity that Louise McLaren had apparently been attracted to the Danish, Norwegian, and other Northern European models of workers' education. That was a very important influence on all those people.
Had she
Miles
traveled
Horton,
there, maybe?
Miles Horton, yeah, all of them had been influenced.
Dawn had it.
Several of her board members were influenced by all of that. To feel that they had seen real folk schools in which there was dedication to the ordinary working people. They had seen real labor schools.
It was more idealistic than ideological in
Yeah.
nature.
Usually, you know, it's important that workers understand parliamentary procedures, so they're not tricked by it. People can't jump up and table a motion that they make, and they can't then vote for what they want to. They got to know all that, so they go through the intricacies of that till they're good at it. They have to be able to write a leaflet. They have to be able to publish a leaflet. They have to be able to write a news bulletin. They have to be able to see through a newspaper story. You know what I mean? And there were teachers that just went over this. The dramatics part was very sharply. They would take their experience. It was beautiful. I only later, looking back on it, realized how educational it was.
Yeah, I always
They
got
would
that
let
idea,
them
yeah.
tell the stories of their strikes, tell the stories of the thing, and they'd say, now get up and do it. It would be like unbelievable. The person would just get up. Suddenly it was happening, see, and then they make another one, like Willie Helms, a stolid old guy like that, you know. Now you be the boss. You know, you get down and be the meanest boss. You know, so,
Yeah.
I'll give you nothing. When I say nothing, I mean nothing. You know what I mean?
Well, he'd seen
And
it
they'd
all.
ask him, you know, where'd you get that? I've seen that mean old son of a bitch. You know what I mean? Client tell me, you know, give me nothing.
Well, I'm getting a little clearer idea now. How about this Southern Conference? When he was
Well, that was Virginia Durr was there, obviously, the
it was who
sister-in-law.
called it and stuff. Who called it?
There was
together?
a call. I don't really know. There are charges in the, remember, the House Un-American Committee is functioning all during this period and is making charges of communism against the Roosevelt administration. Any of these movements are all condemned. CIO, like the PAC, the Black
Well, that's
John.
where my question's coming from. Because you
Yeah.
hear these charges on.
Yeah, well, these charges were made all during the period. And the effort, therefore, was to undercut any support that could be for the
Right.
deal.
You go
Not just
here,
in the
you're
South,
communist,
nationally,
yeah.
UAW was full of communists. Everything was full of communists. Keep it up. Hammer away at this guy. Hammer away at that. I'd say later they got more sophisticated and did pick off more left-wing people. At the beginning, it was so broadside, it was absolutely ridiculous. I mean, the biggest UAW people that were known anti-communist, we call it communist. It was a farce. So the charges were made against, the whole hearing is on just the Southern Conference even more. But remember what a shock this was. This was the South. If ever this could be made progressive, it would be the best region of the nation. If ever there could be a base for Roosevelt, I mean, the New Deal would be in office forever, you see.
Right.
And they had to do something about this.
They didn't realize it was going to become high tech.
Yeah, hey, listen, I still have dreams. I still have dreams that this whole thing is, this is the best area of the nation as far as I'm concerned. I mean, this is an area where the blacks are absolutely at home. They're not immigrants.
Could be,
Migrants,
yeah.
they have potential. I'm more worried about the Northerners who come here and accept, you know, within a 3-month time they buy in their house. Now we understand why they didn't let them vote and all this kind of thing. They smell, they do this. I mean, they're repeating garbage.
They say worse stuff than the whites that lived here.
that then the white workers who have lived here have gotten rid of, you know. They carry this baggage, picking up these phrases, you know.
Yeah.
Some of them, they're bad hombres. They don't bring a good tradition. Very few of them, you know, bring a tradition of pride and being Quakers or being something different, Norwegian socialists or something. You know, they seldom bring The ethnics especially are pretty scared. They got an Italian in the name of something that they quickly sound like.
Well, I've told you how they try to out it, with Joe, some of
Well,
the
especially
new pilots
Italian
from the
Americans.
West
As far
or
as
the
I'm
North.
concerned, the Southern and Eastern Europeans are anxious to prove that
They want to prove how they can out
they
racist.
are. They're true
They
Southerners.
figure Joe's a racist
I
because he's
know.
Southern,
They make the assumption.
and they try to
Yeah.
they try to say something to let them know they're a good old boy,
That's right.
And
That's
I
what they
really
do.
wang them right then.
Yeah, right.
Right in the old.
Well, that's important. Very important.
And he supports me in that. He never
Yeah.
says anything about me letting him have it right then. I do that. But back to the Southern
Once
Conference.
you wing them, remember you're doing a service. They seldom do it again. You never
Yeah, I
know
know.
who the next
They
person is.
blindsided them. They've been
A
blindsided.
cab driver, I always figure that way too. They're trying it out.
Mhm.
And they get away with it 50 times. But one wing
And you let 'em
shuts
know.
his goddamn mouth, he'll lose his tips, he'll lose everything. He'll lose on the next person.
But I let it. What I tell them is that the South's not like when I grew up down here, and I'm proud of it.
That's right. It's
I
changed.
said, we used to think like
Changed.
that
We
down
used
here,
to,
but
that's
we
what
don't
it
think
is.
that way anymore.
That's right. We want
That's out.
stuff.
That's what I would
You're
say.
repeating old-time garbage.
We went through
You're
that.
repeating old-time
We don't wanna
garbage.
go
The
through it anymore.
ignoramuses think like that.
That's right. That caused us a lot of trouble.
Just let them know the ignoramuses think like that down here. The intelligent people think like that.
It is a class issue to some extent,
Yeah,
so-
well, it is. Yeah, it is
You
in the
can't-
sense that the
But
more
the
educated
pilots,
people.
I don't take it from the pilots because they're not lower
Yeah,
class.
right.
They make a lot of money.
They
and
make
it's
big money.
offensive.
Yeah.
But back to the Southern Conference now. So you're not sure who called it, but here we are in Birmingham.
No, it
There's
was,
a whorehouse.
the Luther Patrick was the congressman. Mrs. Roosevelt was there. It was,
He was the local.
there are, I've heard Margie Gelders say that her father, Joe Gelders, who was a left-winger, was one of those instrumental in reaching White House people to hold such a conference. Now, he certainly was on the left. But that would have meant tremendous persuasion, very anti-communist and very non-communist. And that was going on all during the New Deal period. Joseph Gelders was one of the most persuasive people. He would have been like a lot of people on the left.
When you say on the left, you don't necessarily mean communist.
No, he might have been a communist, he might have been a communist sympathizer, but somebody
Right,
very
okay.
close in that area.
Yeah.
And he was a professor at the University of Alabama, very distinguished. Was beaten up badly for trying to get Bard out of prison when he had TB, and a number of other communists that were in prison, communist
Bard had
organizers.
TB in prison.
In prison, yeah,
When was he in prison?
in Alabama, where they just jailed communists. And
Under state law.
the Red Squad just jailed them every time they could seize them.
That would have
Bell's
been
been
what
arrested
before?
too. Bell can tell you about that.
That would have been
They
before High
seized
Point
them.
days, right?
Oh
Before
yeah,
Greensboro
yeah.
days.
Before she came there, she found Greensboro peaceful. Sure, that was terrible. Back in the 30s, that's when Dee Dee is so bitter. You see.
Yeah, that's right. Nat told me
I
about it.
remember Nat is full of shit. I mean, Nat was a big shot even then. I mean, it was Bart that was in prison with TB. Nat somehow knew how to stay in New York headquarters, or he gets the credit for the what he calls the Camp Hill thing and the Black Revolution and the Black Shirt. To me, the more bullshit artist. I just
Some
didn't
people are just very good at going around getting credit from you.
Yeah, right. I don't know. I always got where you got walloped on the side of the head or something.
That was your bad.
Or I
luck,
volunteered. I mean, how can you be that dumb? But you're young, you volunteer. He was smart when he was 16. I mean, he knew never to volunteer. I sort of believed it. See, offer your life,
So what was this conference all about? I mean,
Well, it passed resolutions. It had stirring speeches. It was a bringing together of people that just startled you with their variety. Just in that
would
carload. Think
Virginia
of Ernie
Doe's
Jones.
husband have been there?
I don't know. I know. I think her husband would have stayed in Washington. She would have come. That would have been the story of that kind of thing. In the side of that family.
Was that
After all, Miss Roosevelt, though, was quite a cover. So there
would
were.
Harry Hopkins
I
have
don't
been
know,
there?
but it's
Yeah.
worth your looking at whatever
There
you
would be
can find.
records
Go
of
to a
it.
library and see
Yeah.
if they have the proceedings or if they have
Yeah.
a good. There's a book on it which I've never gotten. Now that book may be making a case for the communist influence in the thing. You'll have to be able to read through it.
Well, that's why I want your opinion on the
Well,
important
that's
issues.
1938. And 1940 was the Chattanooga Second Conference, Southern Conference for Human Welfare. It was 1940 in Chattanooga. That
You
was
didn't go
when-
to that one, or you
Yeah,
did?
I was there. And that's when the League of Young Southerners was formed, and I was elected, whatever I was elected. There's pictures around here.
Well, maybe we'll get to that later.
Junie is in the picture. He was then obviously UNC
Yeah, I remember Junie
prominent
in it,
student. Jim Jackson, later to become a communist black leader, is in the picture, the father of the girl you went to school with. And
Right.
then there's Dutch McConnell, there's two YMCA secretaries. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
broad range of people that were attracted to these things.
So it was an educational thing. It was just inspiring.
Yeah, well, Frank Graham, the president of the University of North Carolina, was the leading figure at Chattanooga. I don't remember that there was a leading figure with Miss Roosevelt so prominent.
She would have been the leading.
In a sense, yeah. She was on the elevator.
Did you meet her?
Yeah, I did. Buddy and I
Chatted with
met her
her?
again in Chattanooga when Buddy was with.
Yeah, I thought Mother went to one though.
Yeah, and we got in the elevator with her. So, we just were very proud of.
Do you want me to ask
Go to the
questions,
White
Lauren?
House, sure.
Okay, I want to go on to because I'm afraid I'm not going to get to it. Get to the winter, then when Mother's father's sick, and you go back to Dallas and get the connection between things. I always get real fuzzy.
Well, you mean why I would have left? I left
Well, you
to
came
work.
back from. You went
I'm
on
not
from-
even sure whether I was scared of getting married. You know, I mean, was it gonna lead to
You like
falling in
Mama a
love?
lot, and you're.
I liked her a lot, and I repeatedly said to her, which she took with a grain of salt, that I would get married after I'd traveled the world probably 3 or 4 times, or I'd been on shipboard. I was going to try to see what things were all about before I got married and settled down. And she had a knowing way of, she never argued or anything. And in the letters, I began writing her a lot of letters from Dallas.
From Dallas.
Yeah. She was dating this cotton mill guy's son. And,
Back in Kennesaw, you're talking
in
about.
Kennesaw, yeah. She had gone home because her father was more gravely ill, and then he died in the spring of 39. And we were in touch a lot and I was working in the plant there.
What did her father die of?
I think they speak of it as an enlarged heart. I think
Like when he called
it's
your
not
congestive
clear,
heart?
if you remember, that there's no clear death certificate. If there is, it doesn't amount to hill of beans because there was really, they didn't afford medical care. They didn't have anyone. But maybe a doctor was
You
called
might not
in
have had a
once.
doctor,
I don't know. And then Lemma, the sister who died in 34, around then after Marie was born, 35, died to me rather mysteriously. What did she die of? You see what I mean? It's like...
I had already shot. She died in a fire, but she didn't.
No. You're thinking of the one that Gammy talks about. A sister of Gammy's died in a fire, burned to death.
But you don't know what Lemma died of?
Lemma died of an illness, but it's never clear. You see, where
Might
you
have
don't
been
have money,
typhoid or
where you don't have money for
Yeah, you don't
anything.
know.
The typhoid is more likely to be a guess diagnosis by Lily or someone, and they'd be telling you that. But these, probably some doctor was called in at some point, but maybe not at death, and said he had an enlarged heart. But, how much did that guy know?
Well, Belle said it was Allegra. And I'd
Allegra?
always heard TB from Mother.
I never heard TB, but I heard him an enlarged heart, and I thought what he said. And,
He was sick, what, from November maybe till March?
oh, he wasn't even well when she left. And when I met him, oh, wait a minute.
When
Wait
did
a
you
minute.
meet him?
I forgot. As I go to Texas, I stopped to see Mother.
Oh.
And I
After Birmingham.
Oh, yeah, when I'm driving back to Texas. I let that grace call go.
Well, Birmingham means you would have had to drive back to Georgia.
I went
that
through
what you did?
Georgia. I stopped to see Mother. I
But
visited
on
with
your way
Mother.
where?
I stayed in Kennesaw with the family.
Oh,
That's when Rudy announced me the first time.
I didn't
Yeah.
realize that. Okay, that happened then.
That happened in early December 38. See, this was a November conference. Then I went back.
Back to Greensboro?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Part of it was a commitment to Rowena. There was no question that she wanted me in Dallas
Mhm.
if she was going to be in Wichita Falls. In some way, she was trying to restructure the family.
She hadn't
She was
gotten
in an
separated from
unhappy,
Grandpa yet.
it was the first separation. And I think she had some dreamboat idea that I could be the keystone of her arch,
Mhm.
And I didn't intend to be, but in some way I reached a compromise agreement that I would go back to Texas. I think she was very fearful, maybe, without knowing, but the wisdom of of a mother that maybe I was falling in love or something, or maybe I didn't give her any indication of it, you see what I mean? And that she would lose
She
me.
felt she was losing you.
Yeah, she had to save Al. And then, of course, later she became convinced she had to separate from Harry when she returned and found Al staying with Harry with some guy coughing or something. She thought it was TB. You know, she had... But it was no doubt, it was connected with a promise to my mother that I would go back. So I worked in Dallas. Weekends, I drove the car up. There's some pictures around here.
Up in Wichita. Yeah, I know
You
those
see
pictures.
in
Yeah.
Wichita Falls, or out on the prairie or something,
Yeah.
you know.
There are pictures of Mother like that too, and I was trying to place those. And they're Mother and Nana in the same picture. But they might be different years.
Those would be more in East Kentucky or somewhere,
Yeah,
along the
figured.
roadside, yeah, at Harlan County, Kentucky.
Yeah.
Most dangerous assignments I ever took from the mine workers.
Yeah.
To go into Harlan County, Kentucky, imagine. You got to be an idiot. I mean, their own goons wouldn't go in there.
They saw you coming in the door, right? Hey, here's
Well,
the guy
I mean,
over
hey, you
Harlan.
got to admit, a guy that'll bring his mother, he knows how to set the thing up and sell insurance. I mean, they might have known I had some instinctive ways of surviving as a
Right.
survivor, you know.
Okay, well now we're up to March of '39. Mother's dad dies. But what happened then?
Well, nothing until I start telling her I wanted to go to the school with me, I guess.
You wrote her about that?
Yeah, and I must have written the school. They wanted me back as a faculty assistant. They're going to pay me $39. I know I got her when I
Are you
got...
supposed to recruit students?
First
That
of all,
part
I
of
haven't
it?
told you that. So
No.
I stop. When I go back after the Southern Conference for Human Welfare,
Uh-huh.
and within a few weeks I leave North Carolina and drive back and stop in Kennesaw, and I stay with the Wests. Her father's coughing. I remember that. He sleeps in a room by himself and he coughs. He can't always come. He seldom comes to the table. They bring him some food in there. He's not a well man. He's coughing. It could be the fact that he's in a room by himself and coughing would tell you something of what you're saying. You know, that maybe it was TB.
Probably both.
Huh?
Probably both.
Yeah. He's not well. He's really, I meet him.
Did you
I
met
meet
him
everybody.
Before, or is this the first time you met him?
No, I'd never met them before. This is 1938. I'm meeting them for the
What did you
first
think
time.
about everybody?
Well, I was very impressed with him, you know, and with Rudy was quite an imp. Marie was like a younger sister at the table. That Lily had taken a raise after her mother died, and her father, you know, was sort of a drifter, John. And Rudy was, he was just a perfect imp.
What did you say
He was
about her
13
father? Her
years
father
old.
was sort of,
He was 13 years old when the father died in the spring,
yeah.
and he took over the plow, and he took over
Right.
making a crop.
What
I
did you
mean,
say her father was like? You said he was what?
Her-
You said a
her father was a sort of drifter, yeah, he took off. I mean, he couldn't take I don't think the burden of raising a child. He couldn't face up to having lost his wife and raise Marie.
Oh, you mean Marie?
Yeah,
oh,
so that
oh.
Lily took Marie into her
Okay, yeah,
home.
you're talking about John Dunn.
John Dunn, yeah, Marie's
Drifter,
father.
yeah, okay.
Sure.
I meant Mother's father. What was?
No, I'm saying he was a small man, and he didn't have much to say. And mostly, I suppose, my knowledge of him is through the lengthy interviews with Lily. and
Which one
so
of the
forth.
brothers did he remind you the most of? If any?
Well, his face, I guess, in a lot of ways reminded me of Rudy more than any of them of the male faces. Yeah, not Don, not the long, stately head. Charlie, a very broad
Chunky,
head.
not
and more,
chunky.
more of a Rudy. If you look at him, was a small-faced man, and the father was. And you've seen the pictures of him, I'm sure. And very handsome and those
I
early
think Mike,
mustache.
Mike, my brother, Mike.
Yeah, right. Small head. Michael.
Wait,
was
he
a
was
small
shorter,
head,
right?
too.
He was shorter, a lot shorter.
Oh, he was short. He was short, yeah, shorter than
Where
that.
does the height come from? I'm trying to figure out who was tall, because you know Gabby's brother Gus wasn't tall. And just curious.
He wasn't short either. He was middling height.
Nobody real giants like Don and Rudy. Yeah, I always thought they were giants. Of course, just over 6 feet is a giant.
Yeah, no, then Michael's in that order. And I don't remember which of her brothers that I met, of Lily's brothers, you know, are tall in height, or thinking of his family. I just haven't isolated height out as a single dimension.
March we're up to, and
Well, we're not up to
Not
March. I'm not
that's right.
there. I'm
You're
not
December
there. I'm
one.
writing to her, and I'm holding a job down, and I'm visiting my mother in Wichita Falls. She's trying to persuade me of this and that.
what does she want you to do?
Well, it isn't very clear. I guess if she had her druthers, it would be to make a home, take a job up there in Wichita Falls, and then send for Harry. I could.
Was Jerry in
He
Wichita
couldn't hold
Falls?
it.
Is that
Yeah.
why she
Well, he was in Chickasha, but this was another plant, and she was at it, and
It was a way to
and
kind
it
of
was
have
a
a
way
relationship
to
with
have
them.
her way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So Harry won't be able to be out in public here and take a job. Maybe he can be a night watchman, and
Oh, she was going to try to bring him out.
I think, yeah, at that point, it's looked to me like she was. But there would be stability. It's depression. I mean, it would be a job. And she'd be able to bring her family. I think she was trying to put her family back.
Almost 30.
And using me as a tremendous leverage on me if she, she was exerting interest. And I really rebelled.
You were going to be like the
I
mainstay.
gave in. The compromise was to return to Texas. That was a compromise.
So you weren't going to live with her, and you weren't going to
I wouldn't go beyond that.
put everybody
And,
together.
yeah, and
Did she
I
want you to
could-
go get your dad, or is that the idea?
No, never asked me for anything. It was more trying to just always size up whether, we could put it together in one place. And I said, just no way, Mom. I'm going to make my way in the
You
world.
wanted to live in a different
I wanted
town.
to be in another place and out from under. I knew that. Undo it, unless you were a weakling. And I just had to follow through.
So you're writing to Mother now about you go to the school. You see this as a way for her to become part of your life too, I guess. Huh? I mean, she
Well,
wanted to get
yeah,
to see her
I was going to
again.
spend the summer there. I would have enjoyed it. So I stopped. Well, first it's the fall now. We're back in the fall of 38. I'd take Mama and her mama, Lily West, up to Ackworth,
In the same truck.
up to Cartersville, to the farm that Don is on,
Oh,
and meet Don in 38.
is this where you get named Wobbly the Plowboy?
Yeah, Wobbly the Plowboy, right. Wobbly the Plowboy, and because I don't put the harness on right.
I thought it was because you couldn't keep the plow in the furrow.
Oh no, that's Rudy's nickname for me, and Don.
Oh.
I forget what he called me, the cowboy or something. So I didn't get the harness on. Anyway, Don is very impressive. Always was, I guess, more impressive to me than the mother. And then these ants intend to eat the internal contents of these hickory nuts.
Yes. Have we got this down now? Have you spoken? The
Anyway.
ants are taking over the world, as Uncle Ben predicted.
Yeah, but don't worry. Anyway, so I get to meet everybody, including that fall, that by the time I left, somebody else came along. But I remember sitting in the car, took Mother somewhere, and then I sat in the car for a long time. I remember me telling her I was going to at least travel around the world twice, what I was going to do before I ever married anybody. And how, later, I asked her how all
I
that
remember
went
her
up in
version of that
smoke.
story. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's just great. I think that's fine.
That's
she
right.
says.
She handled it just beautifully. That set me off in a hurry.
She had things on her mind what she was going to do too.
Right. At any rate, and I left. I went to work in Texas. I don't know. Didn't take me long. I got a job. Stayed with Miss Oliver again, up above the.
What were you doing this time? What was your job?
Well, I started in helping her out with the chickens. I always did that a little bit, but I didn't give her the time. I just helped her out enough on Saturdays. I think I killed 75 chicken every Saturday morning. Probably didn't help her, except now and then to haul in the
Children like
sacks.
this? 75?
Run their necks generally, or laid them on a block and chopped them up. The thing about them, you had to be able to catch them as they bled, so that they didn't injure their wings and turn them blue, banging them on fences and things. So If you tried the other of wringing the neck, then you had to be ready. That's a quick, bloody way to do it, but you got to grab them before the stores don't want them with glue on them. And then she'd
Right.
take them around, sell them with markets. They weren't packaged, pre-packaged like they are today and all this stuff. At any rate, I got this job at Southwest Tablet, and while it was a assembly line production of tablets, the kind of pads of all kinds of sizes, so it was a printing, a lining operation and printing, not printing anything but covers and things like that, but it also had, glue operations, cardboard operations, assembly operations, pressing and cutting. But I soon ended up in the dark room. There too was a strange story. Little did I know that the guy who was going to teach me machine development, the reason we had a dark room was that every tablet had on it like a coupon return. You could send 15 cents in this coupon, and any photograph or negative, we would enlarge it to whatever, 5 by 7 something, and return it to you. And so it was like, you've seen those authors. I went in and he taught me to do it. So really, though, it was machine techniques, although he knew much more about it. But he soon taught me the fixed distance from the enlarging camera to the things. If they were negatives that they sent in, then he just printed them and, enlarged them in the enlarger. But if we had to copy them first, then you had to copy them at a fixed distance so the focus was uniform. Okay? Little did I know at that point in time that the FBI was going to get this. That arrests and everything. I mean, he was just
There was
teaching
something
me
illegal?
something was going on there illegal. I didn't have any idea. He was obviously attracted and making jokes like we do when they're working together with a guy. What a cute piece of ass, what a cute piece of thing. He's looking at
About the
girls.
pictures,
Well,
yeah.
he's sending in these idiot little things of themselves posing in front of cameras.
I know.
And they don't give a damn on a coupon thing.
The
So
phone's ringing. Should I get it?
yeah, you better.
Okay, so we'll leave the tablet factory just for a
You
minute.
want to leave the tablet factory?
And go on to,
Okay.
the
You don't even get
school.
interested in the illegality, okay.
Yeah, I'll go back to that. That sounds interesting. But I think we have to touch on
Well,
highlights.
then, at any rate, I'd written her about going to the school. Meanwhile, the school had written me, and I was becoming a sort of correspondent, advising them, where I might pick up. So they were letting me have a little bit of leeway if I knew any farm people that could come under the classification of farm workers. They might consider them, even without union experience, for scholarships.
Well, they told you this before.
Yeah, I had to work it out. I was thinking of a few of them, so I didn't want to make it just Buddy. So when I got to Kennesaw to see Buddy and to pick her up, she was going to travel with me now back to Greensboro. And
What month is this now?
This must be whenever I left, June, so July. I don't
39.
remember. 39, but I'm going to join the staff now and assist them, serve as an assistant. And that doesn't mean any specific duties. I don't remember I had any specific duties, except to help some of the people with their homework or, stuff like that. Encourage them. Assist Bill Wolf when he's doing the dramatics. Assist Leo with this or that. Nothing was ever laid out. There was specific duties. She's agreed to go. She's agreed to go back with me, so our affair is going to pick up, I can see. I don't know why I'm so confident that I can lay things out, but at any rate, when I get there, I go to see some of her cousins and find Festus. I can't think of his last name. It's one of her, somebody, maybe not, might be a second cousin indeed. I don't remember, because it must be a woman who married a man who's not a West or a Multi. Because I remember his father's a great big guy, and Festus is a very slight guy. Festus doesn't know much, but he plainly is pure country. And he's not going to be any great shakes as a student. He's a full, obviously, just one of the dummies coming along, one of the
So it
four.
wouldn't look like Mother's the only one you
Right,
recruited.
that's all there is to it. At any rate, Festus is picked up by me as possibly capable of some
You
development.
always had political instincts.
Right. He's never going to be any ally of mine or anything. I mean, he's never going to amount to a hill of beans, but he comes along. But I don't mean he comes with me, but he's going to hitchhike up there. He's going to get to Asheville. He can go to school. He never heard of going to school, okay? Since he dropped out and has been working on the farm. He wants
spend the summer.
By then he says it's laying by time. See, the crops are laid by. He can take the time off. Okay, and his father endorses it. Free room and board, you say? Okay. All right. It's depression still, 39. Anyway.
I wonder if he's in any of those pictures.
And I'm already a man giving away scholarships. You can see I'm already moving into the
You've already
power.
moved up in the world.
I'm way up in power without any pay yet. I don't know how to get a payroll job, and I don't know how to get out of the factory yet, but I'm moving around in circles that are way beyond me.
You're a wheel.
Right, beginning to be a wheel. Now, let's take a situation. And remember, too, don't let me squash them. They won't squash. These are all hard hickory nuts. There's nothing harder than a hickory nut. I have a pocket full of them here. They won't squash. Don't worry about it. Okay, I got to put them in that thing I was showing you. I thought I'd done it. This is
Why
the
don't you
other.
give 'em to me?
This is the other 40. This is
is
all
the
right.
ration
This is a
box
good
here.
This is all right here. You can't eat them. You'd love them as strawberries. Now, I take Mama back to Bell's. We're not there long till I take her up to the school. I don't think she's that happy with the son, but it's an important one for my development. I'm meeting the faculty on a better basis, more advanced person myself.
And she didn't
already.
like it that well?
I don't think she tolerates a lot of things because of me. It's not one of she learns. She needs some help. Some of the things are not always. It's not as if she came out of a local union or something. Where they're using examples. If you were in a local union, however you do, that kind of thing. That's easy. But she catches on.
She'd only had secretarial training.
That's right. Yeah, and working on the farm and listening to Barton Bell, which really isn't anything. I mean, she was turned off a little bit by, the political stuff. It got too political as long as it was friendly. But she catches on fast. And Festus, though, of course, I'm not worried about. He's just there for the room and board. There's a few others there.
You don't tutor
that
him a
other
lot.
people have rung in, too, I guess. In fact, the quality of their student body is never as high as the 38th class, of which I'm a part, the first one.
Yeah.
And by 40, I would say it's definitely on the...
Are you being objective, or you just...
I don't know that I am. I'm trying to think of who was in that 39 class. The high point of the 39 class is
Wasn't Ida Lawrence in one of these classes?
38. I told you that
okay,
already.
yeah,
That's
okay,
been on the recording. Yeah, she's a hellraiser. And
Wasn't there a fire?
Yeah, there's a fire.
Didn't Mother save your life?
Yeah, that's in the news bulletin. That's in one of the bulletins here, the Southern School for Workers, Mike, or somebody set off a fire alarm so that Mike could charge up to Buddy's room and get her out of, to the girls' dorm to get her out of her room in the middle of the night.
And instead?
Yeah, it was just one of those good school rumors they started.
But I thought you were the one that
Because
rang
I was
it out.
sweet on it. I probably rang it out to me.
No, she's the one came to save you.
Or she came to save me. I didn't hear it ring and I was sleeping so deep. Yeah, maybe that was it. Maybe you all joking about that.
Yeah.
Okay. You got it straight.
Fire.
She knows all about it anyway. Mama told you the story and you got it straight.
That's where that story comes from.
You're right. Now,
The way
the
I got it,
high
there really
point of
was
the
a fire,
39
and you slept through the
the
fire
high point
alarm.
of the 39 thing was actually that the strikers at Highland Cotton Mill in High Point took off for probably a week and came up. Virgie Lance, Willie Helms, you'll see pictures with Willie and I. So I don't think they spent the whole summer. The Highland Cotton Mill Local 319 is, not to this day, but for many years, starting in that period, a very progressive local union. Esther Gillis, who's taught in my classes here at the university,
Yeah.
is from that local. Buck Anderson was the president. I might have told you this stuff earlier as asides
No, you didn't.
in my High Point thing. Willie Helms works in the mill.
I never knew where you knew her
Bertha
from.
Hendricks works in the mill, okay? Mother and I, it was that fall of 38 even, began going to the Saturday night square dances of Local 319.
I think you
The
said
local
Bill
319.
Robertson might have come to those later.
Your
years.
later students from the university were in coalition with it. It was always the kind of local that didn't limit itself to its local membership, that its dances were open.
It was a CIO.
Seattle, yeah, this was all part of the Seattle movement. The left gave it the broad community orientation that the best left traditions should have. It was a pure dreamboat of what the Seattle could have done to revolutionize the
Well,
South.
how do you explain how it got that way?
It's the left influence.
Where did it come from?
Well, these
Willie,
rank
but-
and filers, many of them were fired people out of Gastonia. They'd had 10 years of seasoning by then. 10 years of seasoning in the mills. They were older.
29.
Yeah, they were older. They were not following a Communist Party line. The other earlier period was a Communist Party line. Now they have the broad CIO, John L. Lewis.
So they'd sort of moved down to High Point from Gastonia?
No, I didn't move anywhere. They drift, the Gastonia alumni, so to speak.
Right.
When you strike a mill with 1,000 people in it, Luray, and get them all fired, they scatter,
I remember.
and their children scatter, and their wives scatter, and they influenced whole movements. Whole mills were influenced later, but
It's
all
like
it
in West
takes,
Virginia when we
it's
encountered
yeast. It's
socialism,
yeast.
yeah.
Give me a dozen
Yeah.
good progressives that have got some seasoning, and I could take anything and organize it. Give me a dozen people here, and I'll go over to, I take IBM. Give me a dozen people inside of IBM that have had a good, bitter experience somewhere else, that has seasoned them, taught them how to move underground, taught them how to shut their mouths when they're shut, open them when they're open, and know when to do it, not to be a horse's ass, not be like the McGovern students, you know what I mean? They'd be like the Democratic Party was this year, united, appealing,
So when they blossom,
Vibrant.
they blossom all together at one time.
and
or
blossom,
one
and
instant,
blossom
yeah.
out. See, somebody said, let's have a square dance. That'll draw the people, you know. It's a great idea.
Yeah, yeah.
Why don't all the unions like that? Run the
Like a
social.
community center.
Yeah.
Where would they have these dances?
And then they'd send a committee, all of whom were rank and filers who had learned to talk a little bit.
Could you
But they
swear
sounds, sure. I
You
swear
know how to do
danced.
when
I
they-
could
do
call
when
them
they
too in
say
those
go,
days. I could call them too. You learn to call them. So you could sort of,
How,
you know.
how do you call them? Who do you,
You know,
what do you say?
Birdie in the cage, all night round, circle to the left, I don't know. You know,
Yeah,
you
okay.
just, you keep it to the square
You
dance
had to
music.
call them sometimes?
Huh?
Did you have to sometimes?
Well, sometimes, yeah, the caller would ask you to cover for him when he went to do something. But I wasn't a caller, no. It
Not
was
a
a
real-
little
good as a
shorty. Nan Urich's father, Shorty Urich, was the caller.
Was it fun?
Oh, it was fun. Buddy and I square danced every Saturday night. Even after we married, we'd go over to square dance there, wherever we lived in Greensboro. And this was a great local. Then I remember,
Was Esther Gillis?
they testified. See, the city was split on the question of public housing. But remember, it's the New Deal period. You can get federal funding. You only need to put up 4% of the money in the city. 96% will be built. So they built public housing, which Bell moved into
You
years
mean
later.
the CIO sponsored it?
Well, this local went and testified. The rest of the CI would lay there dead, or they were too. There was a UAW local in it, but you'd have to go beg them to do anything.
They were like a community group.
Yeah, the UAW local there, for instance, built school buses. The school buses for the whole South, many of them, the bodies, are built in High Point. And that was early organized with UAW. But if the UAW was vibrant in Detroit, it was not vibrant in High Point. He had a dull organizer. He would organize it, left it in the shape so that you could go to them, you could get them to pass a resolution if you handed them a
Was
resolution.
it like getting a grant today? I mean, would you have to write something up? I mean,
Yeah, you'd sort of type something, and get some
carry it
girl
to
to type it
Washington,
and
or
take it.
where would you?
You'd take it to the local and ask them to pass a resolution, but you had to tell them what to do.
No, but I mean, say to get the housing. How did
Oh,
you
to
go
get the
about it?
housing, the city was considering it. So say 2 city councilmen would have gotten outvoted by the other 7. But suppose at the hearings, you bring down Willie and Esther and a bunch of pure earthy people, I've lived here all of my life, sir. Don't tell me that. I mean, anything they said, they talk back to the people that tried to, well, if we do this kind of thing, we'll do that. What do you mean? This is federal money. Why shouldn't we have our share of it? I mean, they knew how to talk back and what to do, see? And that's what sets the place on fire and swings over the neutrals, There's nothing like the salt of the earth people, the common people.
Well, this was like a group like what they talked about in the OEO days. They would call it community action.
That's right. This is all community action. We were in action all the time. I can't think of all the issues, but I remember those for sure. And then I took those tactics to Greensboro.
Well, they had interest beyond the
I
trade union. like
then did the
softball
testifying in Greensboro, and I found I was new for me. I mean,
You mean when we
suddenly
lived in Greensboro?
no, earlier.
Oh.
In 1940, when I was a year later, when I was working for Labor's Nonpartisan League, we suddenly got one city councilman to introduce a resolution. I went down, testified, brought along Blanche Kivett, about 3 or 4 rank and filers, and suddenly we had Greensboro public housing. We just began spreading it everywhere. But suppose nobody had pushed it.
All that had to happen is you say you wanted as a community.
You wanted it almost, and they put up so little money that what the hell's 4% of the cost of $1 million project, $40,000?
But the federals had to have you put up with 4%.
You had to do something. You didn't even have to put it up in a hurry. I mean, you could. Meanwhile, the people got subsidized housing. It was terrific. And these were all things that couldn't have happened without some kind of rank and file, in motion. And Local 319 was a beautiful local unit. More than that, it would pass advanced resolutions that were political. Now, later that began to divide certainly officers like Virgie Lance, who was a cautious conservative going along with this program. Virgie Lance objected to, say, Willie being a star. She objected, she liked to be the star. I always tried to handle Virgie when I dealt with her, when I represented Labor's Nonpartisan League, by always going to her, to let her be the leader of anything local.
You said that these people came up to the Asheville school that summer.
Yeah, and they were very good because they were describing what the strike was all about. Here was a vibrant strike in action right there.
Oh, I see.
And they came from the picket line to the school. They brought a portion of their picket line up. Willie might have been there as a student. Others might have been there as a student. But here came 20 or 30 of them for a long weekend in which we discussed the stretch out. They had gone on strike against the stretch out of the job assignments. They had simply, if they took care of 82 looms, they wanted them to take care of 92 looms or 102 looms, you see, and they'd stretched out their work for the same pay. And that's what they were rebelling against, the work assignments. And it was a very good tactical thing. They brought some of their leaflets with them, and we practiced on what other ways could you have fought this thing? How else could you, each of you try writing your own leaflet? How would you have attacked this thing, Would you have attacked it? What other issues are there? You want to ask them more questions, It was like a living example. It was very good. That was the high point of the 39 thing, more than the quality of the variety of the students. They lacked some of the fire the general students did of the trade unionists that had been there in 38. Some of the cotton mill women had vibrant experiences in 38 in those South Carolina mills. Some of the auto workers had others. We didn't have that breadth of variety.
You have more of a lackluster crew.
Yeah, right, for the basic students. It was a good year, but I had the same. I loved my faculty. I learned from them. They were good. They gave me more advanced training, and they brought me into their homes like in the evening, more. They had cottages that were rented by the school. So Leo had a cottage, another had a cottage, especially Leo hosted. I loved to have discussions, and this was all I was beginning to get.
Did you say his monthly review was not very, I remember the monthly review.
Well, the monthly review
would
not have been highly regarded by the Communist Party USA. It might have been regarded highly by the Chinese Communist Party very early, meaning they foresaw certain anti-Soviet or Soviet criticisms inside the monthly review that they...
He would have criticized the Soviets for cutting a deal with Hitler and that sort of thing.
No, I don't know that he didn't make...
Did he not publicly do that?
Peace. I don't know that he did that one as much as he came along later with some criticisms of Marxism that they find intolerable.
Was he publishing that
that
at that
Marx
point?
is wrong in his theory. It's beyond me, these
Okay,
arguments.
yeah,
You
right,
follow
they're
me?
always
They're theoretical
beyond me.
arguments. Marx is wrong in his theory of the exploitation of labor in the following way. You follow me? He was a theoretician and an economist, a very
Was
well
he,
trained.
was he doing this magazine at the time, or was that a later?
Oh no, that came later. The monthly review.
Wait,
Oh, I don't know when it was established. It was established after the war, I think.
you think you need your sweater?
Hmm?
You think you
I don't
need
know
your
what
sweater?
happened. I knew I got cold. I get cold sometimes. I'll just put it around me and I won't put it on. I don't want to get overheated either.
Yeah, you have to kind of figure out in between.
I swing both ways.
I was just trying to figure out what he did for the rest of the year when he wasn't there.
I have a notion his wife had money and he didn't have to do very much except teach at Columbia's New College. He finally ended up teaching at a very advanced undergraduate division called New College. I think you could do as you damn pleased. You didn't have to take so much science, you didn't have to take so much math, so that it was like a Black Mountain College, freedom, and
And he just wrote books.
and he wrote, well, his Man's Worldly Goods is a beautiful study of the economy with a Marxist. They're worth looking at today. I mean, he tried to, in non-Marxian terms, explain Marxism. Is We the People as a history of the USA from a socio-economic political point of view of some such, progressive character. He never believed that Marx should be regarded as a theory that people object to. He always felt it was so, just put it simply, it should always be able to be put in American and plain terms, or there's something very wrong with it. So that he very often clashed with communist theoreticians, you see what I mean? He had disdain for them.
Was there anybody on the faculty the second year that wasn't there the first that was noteworthy?
No, not that I
Mostly same
remember. They
people
changed
back.
some assistants. There were other assistants, and I don't remember
But
who they
Leo
were.
Huberman was a constant. He was
These
there.
three were constants. They came back. They loved it in 38, and they came back in 39.
Who
They were rare. I was very lucky to encounter them. I don't know that I would have encountered anybody at
Who
Highlander.
besides him?
Miles is no genius. Not at 30.
He was on the faculty too.
Miles is lightweight. No, Miles Horton running Highlander.
Oh, yeah.
Miles is lightweight. Don is repetitious. I mean, I'm trying to think of who the hell could have, the best they could have is a CIO
This
lecturer.
is the
There was
first really good mind you'd run into.
These were superb national minds, and they were
Who were the top three? You're saying Leo Huberman?
Leo Huberman, Mildred Price
Mildred
teaching,
Price.
very stern English teacher, with a very, as I remember, her husband was an expert on Mexico, an expert journalist, and she was some kind of journalist.
She was having you do the writing when she asked you
That
to do
was
the writing?
Mildred Price, and her sister Mary I came to know later in North Carolina.
Now, who was the third one that you think the most of?
Oh, Bill Wolfe taught dramatics. I don't think they were able to get him after those 2 years, 38 and 39. I don't know what he ever did. I know nothing about him.
You don't know if he was a
Before or
Shakespearean
afterwards, like I
actor
do
or-
the other two. I never knew what came of them afterwards. I didn't keep up with them.
It was just an... You
I
did
was
with
not a
Leo
good letter
Huberman.
writer.
You kept up
Oh,
with
I
Leo
kept up
Huberman,
with Leo
because I
Huberman.
remember...
Yeah, I did. Kept up with Leo Huberman for years. And he was disappointed when I didn't keep up with him in the 50s. I mean, I went to West Virginia and I didn't maintain, like, visiting him every time. I did 1 or 2 years,
Yeah.
and I dropped it, and I should have kept it going. I guess I felt he was becoming some kind of doctrinaire, vested interest person with monthly review that had a axe to grind, like that the only people with any sense of the Chinese, he was
That
beginning.
was his point of view.
I don't know that was his point of view. I began to feel like he had some such point of view, And I didn't really
What,
feel
from
like,
reading
like
it?
I never understood then the Chinese-Russian fights. I began to plague on both your houses. I mean, I began to leave
Yeah.
things absolutely alone. Unlike Junie, who felt he had to denounce them, having become an active communist, I just stayed far away from them.
Well, those debates always bored me very greatly as a child. When Nat would get into a debate with
Oh,
somebody on the
that
street,
is just
he would meet neighbors on the street, and they would get into a big discussion of whether or not the recent statement by some
Oh,
official.
Christ, yeah,
What
you
did
know,
you think
doesn't
of
the
that
Khrushchev
statement?
statement mean there's been a betrayal of the hypocrisy of the beggar? I mean,
I
there's
know,
been,
right?
Jesus
It was
Christ.
like the latest
you
from the
talk about,
Vatican.
yeah. I'd been trained under totally different people. George Edwards, a beautiful all-American socialist, you know, in Dallas. A gorgeous, you know, Leo even preaching there's something wrong with a Marxist theory that can't be explained in three-letter words, you know. You know, just these became my Bibles, you know, and I tolerated communists because, after all, look at the lock-in I had with Barton Bell, with Dede and that. I mean, it wasn't war on Mother's Family I wanted, you know. That was one
When
thing.
did you do most of the reading?
I was not a factionalist, and that's like a factionalist by nature. So he
Oh, I
brings
know.
factionalism. As far as I'm concerned, the Communist Party ought to beware of people
Well,
like that.
he gets into factional fights with
He's
Bell
a-
over having
he's a
lunch with
faction-
women.
I'm saying he's a
Factional.
normal factionalist. He suits the worst tendencies of these minority parties, which can end up just trying to kill each other over on the left, you know.
Well,
I always
anyway, so
felt
what?
in the South we couldn't stand to fight each other doing anything.
Oh, you're probably tired now. I wanted to.
Well,
I
get-
got to the summer of '39. That's what I wanted to get to.
Well, and Mother and I are at school, and we're having.
Then I wanted to get to.
I'm Willie. I'm getting
What
very
you
well
did in the
acquainted
fall.
with Willie. I had a very long
Well,
friendship
Willie
with
was really
Willie for
important
many
to you,
more
yeah.
years.
I
Sure.
ended up meeting him
Sure.
and his girl.
Yeah. So Willie was around for years and years, you know, as a union organizer. Later we both worked for the United Furniture Workers in tough organizing campaigns.
But for sequence. Then
Willie
what
was a
happened in the
perfect
fall?
example of the others and Red Hendricks that came out of those strikes that became CIO people, that learned, that were taught to read and write by the Communist Party. They were grateful all their lives, you see, for what the Communist Party had done.
During the 30s, you mean? Like
They
that?
did 29 strike. They took illiterate workers. Many of them were grateful. I'd meet them, many of them in the mills.
Right
you
during
know.
the strike, they taught him?
Oh, yeah, they brought in teachers from the North, I mean, just to teach them to read and write. The Communist Party was their mother. They taught them to read and write. What more do you
Right.
want? I mean,
You mean he didn't know anything and they taught him everything?
no, I mean, listen to Willie. I mean, he's salt of the earth talking, you know, slowly, methodically, the same ritual of 29. I mean, you know. Well, you know, I can hear Willie to this day, the echoes of his voice, you know. I mean,
What would he say?
well, the working class has to mobilize. I mean, they've got the, he's following the words of 29, you know, just as live and vibrant. They have to mobilize. And when they've mobilized, they've got to organize, and they've got to come together. They haven't got it all straight on him. And he lays it all out. Now he's a CIO organizer. He's picked up more. You follow me? They're jammed in together, and it's beautiful. You know, and Red was more vibrant, humorous, but Willie was serious, you see. Never so serious that you didn't just love to hear him just go on with this stuff. Because he had some hobbies that were cruel, too. One of them was stealing dogs.
He stole dogs
Yeah.
from like,
That's
children?
very cruel to do. I mean,
I
you know,
think
people
so.
put up salts. Yeah, it shocked the shit out of me. You know, somehow or
This thing,
other.
Michael Thomas.
Yeah. No, but I mean, that shocked the hell out of me. But, you know, there were like little twists in his nature. If he loved a dog, he would carry little ground meat with him on long trips, you know, and he'd tempt the dog, and then all of a sudden, Willie, what the hell is this dog doing in the car? He'd be coming back from Martinsville, Virginia or something. Boy, that was a pretty one. I said, yeah, well, let's take it back hell.
How many? Did he have a lot of dogs as a result?
I
of
don't
this
know, you know, he
behavior?
just, when he saw a dog he wanted.
But I mean,
took
he
it.
had a lot of dogs at his house then.
He had several, yeah. I don't think he sold them or anything. I mean, you know, he just saw a dog he wanted. It was just like his right to, if the dog wanted him and he wanted the dog, then they wanted to meet. He just petted him and loved him and
Was
held
he
him
a
up and made
smart
sure.
man?
Yeah, smart in a limited way, but he learned. He tried to learn. They had to teach him to become a better organizer and then to become a negotiator. I've had him in negotiations with me. He'd listen carefully. He'd say the right. He'd know when to shut his mouth and when to speak. He had shrewd, native, working class, shrewd judgment, you know, which you can greatly respect.
Well, now, what did you do after the summer? The summers ended.
Then I went to Greensboro.
What did Mother do?
Now, Mother went to live with her sister, Belle, where she'd been before,
Not on Carter Street, but on Carter Street?
on Prescott Street, as I
Prescott.
remember, yeah, in Greensboro.
Carter Street's where Belle
That's
lived during
later.
the war.
That's during the war, yeah. Carter
Prescott.
Street is High Point in the war.
So Prescott's where she lived.
Prescott Street is where I took you once.
Did she go to have a job? Yeah, right.
Well, yeah, she went to work for Spencer B. Adams,
The lawyer.
the chairman of the Republican Party of North Carolina,
Oh, yeah, right.
and a lawyer.
What are we
And he paid her $7 a week for 5 days and Saturday morning. And she was expected. She probably wasn't the greatest typist or the greatest secretary and receptionist, but she was, that was it. And Spencer B. Adams was a fossilized, elderly lawyer with hardly any practice left, not very great practice, and held this honorary position of a sort. Remember the Democratic, this is not the vibrant Republican Party of today, but a shell that nobody really cares to chair.
Yeah, how many Republicans kicking her pen at
Right.
High Point? in
Well,
1939?
this is for the state. He was
Oh.
actually for the state.
Oh, so there might have been.
The point is, somebody wants that honor, but usually it's down in a Republican county where
Right.
they're using a guy in a Democratic county. There were always constant Republican counties in the mountains of the South. You know that, don't you? From Union County, Blairsville, Georgia on, those are all Republican counties.
So most of their membership is there. But anyway,
Well, yeah, that's why Broyhill's base, you see, in this latest
okay, so she's
senatorial.
got this job, and what are you doing?
Now, me, after some days of drifting around, I don't remember who makes the introductions, but very quickly it becomes apparent that my reputation is good. Cole Dannenberg likes me. He's a CL organizer
You
in
knew him from
Charlotte.
before.
Yeah, and he's moved up here, as I remember, either then or does later. Other people have met me and know me from the Southern School for Workers conferences now that were held and are going to be held in the fall of '39. And the school has given me a very, I don't know whose connections, whose recommendation it was, but Enoch Price, they've organized a thing called a branch of Labor's Nonpartisan League. The chairman of that nationally is John L. Lewis. And they in the South, in North Carolina, they called it the North Carolina League for Progressive Democracy. There's no question they're partisan. They're going to function inside the Democratic Party. There's no room for a nonpartisan, except that they're affiliated with it. See, they're showing their sympathy to labor. So they've already appeared before the state CIO convention, gotten its endorsement. Not the AFL. This is going to be the political action arm later of the CIO, which is under John L. Lewis then. Strangely enough, remember, this is going to be textile workers and others, not miners in this area. And they affiliate because apparently they get like a $500 grant. They'll get something from John L. Lewis. He has some money to give them. I remember it was something like $500. Not going to last very long. And
This
they
is part of
elect
a
sort of a New Deal coalition. The labor people, E.L. Sandifer, the CIO director, takes the vice chairmanship. Enoch Price, the editor of the Greensboro Patriot, a weekly in Greensboro. A very decent human being, I've told you, Mildred's brother. Well, there would be a connection right away. Introduced to go see my brother Enoch. He has a job, maybe, we can use it. And Enoch lays out the job. He said, I think we can get $500 in the bank. That's not going to go very far, but we don't need to have an office. And you can use my office when you need a typewriter. And we don't have any, I don't know if we have a salary to pay you. We'll eat it up very fast. I don't know how we pay any expenses. So they hire me. He gets the board to hire me. I'm not even sure I appeared before the board. I don't remember appearing before any board.
And you're 20
If I
years
did,
old.
I appeared. There was E.L. Sandifer, there was him, there was some people present, okay? Pauline Galloway, I meet her. She's a amalgamated clothing organizer. In fact, Buddy and I stay at her house for a long time, rent-free. That's where I get my first bad illness after we marry. But we're not, that's coming later. I'm single. But I go to work sometime in September for this outfit.
What's it
And
called again? I got mixed up with it. It's not, it's the Labor's Non-Personage, but it's called
North Carolina League
with North Carolina. Then the Democrat.
for Progressive Democracy. Pretty good name. Okay, that's what it's going to stand for. Now, and it's got a platform. There's been a convention, a state convention. There's resolutions where they stand on minimum wages.
Were you at all that?
No, none of it. I was
You're
at
just
school. This
hired to
probably
be
was
a
an August
functionary, yeah.
convention. They decided to get a staffer. They decided to elect their officers. They were going to get a staffer. Now, where they're going to get anybody with will work for, whose payroll you're going on? Labor's Nonpartisan League payroll? No, you're going to go on. If they'll give you some money. We might have got one more $500 grant from them. I don't know what we did. At any rate, they hired me at $25 a week, and
That was pretty good.
very high pay. And that's what was so impressive, just naming those figures. Very high.
I even know
Very
that.
high, yeah, very high. A year later, I went back into the plant, and I was only making $14 a week and $11 a
Well, you
week
must
basic
have thought
pay,
you
and
were doing
14
well.
was some overtime. But I didn't get it.
She was
That
just
was
like-
interesting. They
She
paid
was
me when they
making
could.
$7.50?
Catch as catch can, and expenses were hitchhiking. I mean, you had to find somebody to spend the night with when you got there.
Did you tell me she was making $7.50?
Seven. She got
$7.
$7 a week. Yeah. Okay. So, but wait a minute. We're not married. She's just. I'm going to work. See.
But I mean, talking about, what do
Yeah.
you call it?
So that fall, I began traveling. See, I'm hitchhiking around the state. I'm starting to know the state. Then in the fall, sometime we hold a meeting, a rally of some type in Burlington. I remember that. I have to make my first major speech, tell my first jokes. I mean, I have to really organize to make an appearance. I remember some of those, like to this day, the Burma Shave ads along the road. I used the Burma Shave ads. I finally, that
For your
became
joke?
my
That was your
theme,
joke?
my jokes, yeah. I would rewrite the Burma Shave thing. See, first I'd give a good, two laughable.
Like what would be the example?
All right, I'd give a real Burma Shave one that makes people laugh. I'd pick out the two funniest Burma Shave ones I'd seen along the road.
Populars?
Huh?
Ones that were popular.
Don't stick your elbow out too far.
It might go
It
home.
might go home in another car. Burma Shave, okay?
Right.
All right, then they'd all laugh. That was Burma Shave. Now I'd have my slogan, see, and that would be something connected with, why they should vote or why they should do something and be active, okay? I'd just make up a little rhyme.
Who was your inspiration as a speaker? Who was the one?
John A. Lewis. Oh, I fell in love with him, yeah.
Did he used to tell jokes?
Oh, yeah, he could tell jokes. He could.
Because Junior said you were the best
Magnetize.
speaker that he's
Yeah,
ever heard.
a lot of people thought I was the best public speaker that anybody had heard. Many of the students loved me at the university when I'd come off shift, especially later. This was not. I got acquainted with them during this job. I got acquainted with Dr. Frank P. Graham. I collected $5 membership in North Carolina League from him. When I came to Chapel Hill, we had a Chapel Hill chapter of professors.
You knew him, you mean you chatted with him?
Oh, he came to the meeting of the Orange County chapter and paid his $5. I collected $5 from Professor J. O. Bailey.
Okay, you'd have a meeting here, and just different ones would turn
Oh, I would
out.
just, Enoch would come and do the sort of major, for a thing like this. In the cotton mill towns, I would handle. But for something as important
Enoch
as
was
this,
high up in...
well, you need someone to deal with professors, like an editor, something.
What was
Then
his
I would be
job?
called on as organizer. He was the editor. He was like the secretary
Of that-
treasurer, or whatever he had a
Of that
title.
weekly paper? too?
No, he was the editor. But remember, it wasn't like being editor of the daily paper. It meant he was a good
The
journalist.
weekly paper.
Yeah,
You
you
would
did
describe
everything
it.
on a weekly, as you can imagine. It wasn't Rudy's weekly. It was a...
Did I ever meet him? I remember... Mary
No, I
Price.
don't. If you did, I don't know it. You were born in 42. We were gone already to Nashville.
I
We were
keep thinking
drifting.
of a Mary Price I thought I met.
Mary, you did. His sister Mary. Mildred's sister
Mildred,
Mary.
and he had a sister.
Mary
Mary.
came to the house a lot in Greensboro.
Okay, but I'm not
She
just
ran for
imagining.
governor when I ran for Congress. in 48.
I remember the name. I don't know that I
Yeah.
remember the face.
I don't
Did she
think-
wear had her hair up on top of her
Yeah,
head?
yeah, you got her. You got her.
Dark
yeah.
hair on top of her
Yeah,
head?
right.
Okay.
Yeah, Mildred
I do remember.
didn't, but she did, right. That was Mary. And then Branson, you would not have known, but she was in Georgia that year. That
Were there
was
4
that's
kids?
4 of the 8 kids that I've named right
Oh.
there in the bunch. All of those were part of the whole progressive movement, you know.
How did a bunch
And
of
not a
kids
one
like
of them that I
from
know
one
of were
family?
marked out as communists or anything. They were all just independent souls that absolutely descended from the system, you know. And
How would all of them from the same family be influenced that way?
well, I
Would
told
one
you
of them go
earlier
first?
about what a bright family this was. They all were raised on a farm, a very bright farm family. They insisted their children all get college educations. The other 4, as far as I know, became leading executives, vice president of Kaiser Steel, others are professionals,
North Carolina
authors.
family?
Oh,
Where are
sure,
they from? What part?
from Rockingham County, outside of Reedsville, yeah. They were just raised to do a hard day's work, raising tobacco, raising corn.
That's an
But they
interesting
were all
family.
very
They
fascinating
might have
family. They all
descendants.
spoke articulate English. They all enunciated well. They were taught by, like, almost school teacher, mother and father, who might have been, the mother might have been a school teacher, and the father, you know, living in the country was just a secondary. They never,
Right.
it was like the blessings of a great America. It was almost like they were not Quakers, but you almost felt they had a tradition of education, a tradition of pride, a tradition. I mean, Mildred spoke the King and Queen's English, you know, at all times.
Just an interesting family.
Mm-hmm. They were,
What's that town there at Rockingham?
Rockingham County is north of Greensboro. They came from north of Greensboro, so when he settled in Greensboro, he was the only one,
But
actually,
they
of the 8.
might have
He was the only
descendants
one of the
around,
8 that
right?
ended up around here.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the others scattered nationwide. Yeah, they scattered
Enoch.
nationwide. Huh?
Enoch did
Enoch did, yeah.
that. Does he have
And
family
he ended
here?
up ultimately in New York State somewhere, like Rob Hall did, editing a paper up there. I mean, in the 70s, 60s.
So they may not have children.
I don't know of
around.
anybody in this state left of my places,
Okay.
yeah. There's 4 of the 8 I never heard of ever being around here. If they did, it's neglected, you know, I've forgotten.
Well, it's just an interesting story.
Mhm.
Okay,
Well-
so you're an organizer now.
I'm
And are you
organizing
working
in political
indirectly
action.
for John L. Lewis?
Yeah, there's no
Okay.
question. I'm called into Washington by John L. Lewis.
Well, when you said you were the
I am
youngest
treated like a
organizer
member
ever
of his
hired
staff. Huh?
by John L. Lewis.
When John L. Lewis calls a
This is the job you're
staff
talking
meeting,
about?
a staff meeting of Labor's Nonpartisan League, to this day, when I went back to the United Mine Workers Welfare Fund, they could look me up in their records and find me under the Labor's Nonpartisan League hire and fire thing. And I was treated, even though it was a grant, down there because I was
There's a
called in.
record of your $25 a week in there.
I don't know if the grant is there, but the important thing is when they called a meeting, I was called in. Another guy
Where would
that
you go
I've
for the
never
meeting?
kept track of, except once or twice in my life, was Jack Fry. He was called in from Texas. He was Labor's Nonpartisan League in Texas, a very young guy like me.
They weren't all over the
But
country?
not as young as
Were
me.
they all over the country? Just certain?
Yeah, these were the outposts. See, they didn't have mining. I mean, the heartland would have had hard-nosed old miners in
Well,
charge.
he's trying to branch out to non-mining
He's
industrial
using
workers,
Labor's
right?
Nonpartisan League as the political arm. He's bringing a 20s tradition that you're not very familiar with.
No.
Historically, the phrase nonpartisan league would immediately be recognizable in the Middle West. This is how the whole progressive movement was dubbed. In other words, the trick in a country where the farmers were Republican was to get them at least to a nonpartisan level,
I see.
so that
Okay.
the whole progressive movement very often was called, in its political action arm, for a while, the nonpartisan leagues would control politics in several of the Middle Western states.
You're talking the 20s, maybe Wisconsin would be like
It
that?
revolts, yeah, there would be revolts. The Progressive Party to this day is a big party in Wisconsin, where they refuse to accept the old party system. See, when they go into rebellion, they refuse to go over from Republicans to becoming Democrats, so they give them an alternative. Well, in signed petitions, they have an old Finnish and Norwegian tradition. 5% of the people sign tradition, they get a new political
Well,
party.
this was more of a political job than it was a
It wasn't
trade
political.
union job.
It was not a trade union. It was,
Oh,
it
okay.
was the political action arm of the
I
trade
didn't
union.
really understand that.
That's where I began.
When you said you
I
worked
didn't
for
be- I
John L.
mean,
Lewis,
remember it.
you didn't
No.
mean a trade union job.
Boy, but it's treated by the unions very much. It's like working for the funds, and then working for the union, and then working for the political action
It's
arm.
like working with political action.
You
Board.
move around. The typical political action person came out of the UMW, I mean, out of the unions, out of the CIO. And in my case, I simply moved from at Chickasha, where I had actually brought in the CIO. That's what got Jerry smacked. And brought in a CIO organizer. And then left. I mean, we couldn't pull it off. There was nothing
That
to
was
do.
the one where you were kind of
Nobody-
naive about
Oh, I was naive as hell, yeah, how they could scare everybody half to death and get you
But
fired.
here you get into more political role.
Here I'm in a political role, yeah. You have to register people to vote, you have to get them, you have to go get candidates. That was the other thing. I was a terribly active guy. Most people didn't do all the things I did. I had more candidates running. I would coax more goddamn workers
To run
right
on
out of
this
the
ticket?
mills. Right out of the mills. Simple workers with 2-3 grades of education to run. They said, I can't run for anything, I can hardly.
What, like state legislature?
Oh, yeah, for state legislature, for House, for county commissioner. Blanche Kivett, a sewing machine operator for the
And they
amalgamated.
run on this ticket?
No. They
Democratic
run
Party.
in the Democratic Party. They'd
Oh,
pay their
okay.
$5, get their name on the ballot, and then we'd start
How
putting out
soon?
leaflets for them. They couldn't believe it. Their picture on a leaflet, their name on a leaflet.
How soon was all this happening? By the November of '39, you were going for
Oh,
election?
no, they spread the May primary. I was
May
active by the
primary, so it's a
April or May
a party
primary.
election.
I was
We're
out to
aiming at.
get them I was wanting to get them into motion.
This was set up anticipating the '40s election.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Oh, we're getting it.
And he's very anti Roosevelt. You're not realizing that now.
Yeah, I do. I remember
John
that.
L. Lewis
They
opposed
split,
Roosevelt.
yeah.
They'd split in 37. He got insulted by Roosevelt in 37.
Uh-huh.
He who sups, it ill behooves one who has supped at labor's table to curse with equal impunity. This is the kind of speech he made. Those who fight in labor's ranks and those who oppose it. That was his scorn for the aristocrat in New York.
There wasn't some railroad strike they got into it about?
No, that's later with
Steel?
Truman.
What was-
With Truman, he
Oh,
wrote with
okay.
Truman. Yeah, you got the railroad brotherhoods, you got the miners, and they all. That's why in '48, some of the misguided calculations of people like myself was that they were so opposed to Truman, it was impossible to believe they could heal the breech button in any way, And my God, they hated Truman with a vengeance for breaking their strikes. The miners' strikes. Why, Truman got the judges. He sent his whole, Tom Clark, his attorney general, sent everybody into court to smack. It would be like expecting the blacks to love Ronald Reagan.
Well, I was going to say, John L. Lewis ended up being kind of against intervention in the war.
Oh, yeah, he
So, I
ended
mean,
up
you
with
kind of disagreed
Lindbergh,
with
huh?
him, didn't you? Didn't
Then
you?
I had a break with him, and I left for Mine Mill. It was too much.
But now that was later, so we're not up that far.
No, that's gotten to be
Are
40,
you getting tired of hunting?
41, 42. Yeah, I think as it approaches 6,
I think we'll stop.
it's about 5:35.
We'll stop.
Yeah,